Welcome to the Yo-11 podcast, mostly Vegas, no BS, casino experience, and more. Today's episode is called For the First Time, Las Vegas Had True Luxury Villas. This is episode 104, season 4 of the Yo-11 podcast. Michael Trager is a casino and travel loyalty expert who also helps people turn their travel dreams into reality. And now your host, Michael Trager. How's it going, Michael?
It's going really well. How are you doing today?
I am doing all right. Pretty much bounced back from COVID. Just a little. The audio people can't see what I'm doing with my hand and my face right now, but it's just a little in the sinuses. But other than that, I'm good.
Yeah. So that's how many times have you had COVID?
That was my first time.
Wow.
My COVID cherry was
ding,
popped.
Ding, ding.
Yeah.
Do you have a sound for that? Do you have like a sound effect for first time COVID?
I do not have a sound effect for first time COVID. I know who I got it from too. So, but I'm not going to say their names because they're favorite Vegas vlogger friends of mine. So.
Are you? But you managed to stay away from it for so long. That's pretty cool.
I know, right? Freaking! I know. I did so good. Like the streak is broken.
That's right. You went back to licking ashtrays and tables, and then look what happens.
I probably had to do stepping foot into Circus. Though I would not be surprised if Circus.
Hey, you know what? I happen to like Circus. So
well, I feel like the cure to COVID is what's in the carpet, because that carpet's been around for so long that like it has seen everything. It's seen the bubonic plague. It's seen everything. I think that somewhere within there is the cure for many things. I just wish scientists would heed my call.
Cool. So before we jump into our history segment, you have a little image to show us and some good news about Mirage.
Yeah. So it turns
Mirage Rock.
Mirage Rock. Mirage Rock. Where is it? Oh, here it is. So yeah, Mirage Rock. So the villas are staying. They're not getting rid of the villas. They're going to be renovating the villas, and there's going to be a private gaming room as well. I'm not sure if there's already one there or not, or if they're going to add that onto it. Hopefully they're not going to destroy one of the villas to add a private gaming room. I've never been to the villas, so I don't know. That's way above my. I'm not classy enough to have stayed at the villas. But so there's that. So that's not going anywhere. However, I did learn today that the atrium will be no more. So yeah, that's a shame. I wonder if they're going to at least keep the dome.
It's pretty, get rid of Volcano, gain 1,000 hotel rooms. The financial element of that is pretty huge if you think about it, right? Especially for big conventions and convention hotels. I mean, 1,000 hotel rooms definitely provides a lot more revenue than one Volcano.
Yeah, and the good thing about that is it's not like we're losing a live attraction, because we're gaining a live attraction because the Guitar Tower does light shows. So that's going to be awesome. I think it's a really good fit. I think the Las Vegas Strip is a perfect fit for their Guitar Tower, because I've seen what theirs does in Florida and Hollywood. So if it's anything like that with the light shows and everything, it's going to be right at home, I think, on the Las Vegas Strip.
So let me throw something out to you that's going to really upset you.
Okay.
So you see here, you're getting rid of this Volcano, which we both think is iconic and makes us both very sad.
What if they get rid of the Bellagio fountains?
Oh, Michael, have you forgotten who I am? Have you forgotten about my very viral article that I put out back in, was it 2016 on the VegasBright site, where it was sort of an April Fool's joke that happened a day early about the Bellagio fountains being replaced by a shopping mall, which got viral spread over Facebook to 90,000 shares. And people saw the title and the image, and instead of reading the article, which said April Fool's in it 3 times, they just shared their disgust and their anger that MGM would consider doing such a thing and all that. And it became like a big deal. And then Robin Leach 2 weeks later picked up on it as an actual news story. And then it got a bigger audience. And then the review journal had to like retract the article that Robin Leach put out, and MGM had to issue a statement saying that they have no plans.
Link to this. I remember now. You've got to link to this in the show notes.
And that
Don't forget.
put out a statement saying that they have
right.
no plans to replace the fountains, that it's an integral part of the Vegas landscape, and a huge draw, by the way, because when people think Bellagio, they think those fountains. For any sporting event, they want to do some sort of a setup by the fountains. If you saw it with F1, we saw it with what was that? The Super Bowl. They had a thing at the fountains. Like the fountains has sort of become, I would say,
F1, of course.
Yeah, I would say.
So what you're saying is that
the gazebo. I got a thought here. I have a thought here. Let me finish my thought because I have to finish my thought. The Bellagio is like the Bellagio fountains is like the town gazebo of the Las Vegas Strip. You ever see those small towns and those how their happenings at the gazebo, like special things happen at the gazebo in their little park, their little town square? That's pretty much what the Bellagio fountains is to the Vegas Strip, and it's just so much of a draw that they're never going to get rid of it. I can't imagine. Now, I don't think MGM will get rid of it. But I think that if the Bellagio fell into other hands, maybe, that didn't really care about having a huge lake that isn't making any money, in fact, costing them on a daily basis, maybe. But you have to consider that when Bally's opened the Grand Bazaar shops right in front of Bally's with all those shops and that giant ass Starbucks that was there at the time, which isn't there anymore, because the place, the area doesn't make great revenue. It's basically what's going. No one really goes, but like they have it out there and everything. I'm sure they had the conversation of, man, we can sure you put this body of water to use here, but they haven't done it. I don't think they will. I really honestly don't think they will.
You know what? I'm getting what you're saying there, because what you're saying also, I mean, you have to look at it from the bean counter perspective, that those fountains actually do bring them revenue, right? For things. So it's different than the volcano. You know what? I guess the volcano falls under like nice to have. Also, like, think about the view, like the fountain view. There is a lot more to be said of like dining or having a hotel room or suite and looking at those fountains, right? You can look at those fountains for hours and hours and hours, and people love looking at those fountains. Seeing the volcano erupt is like a one and done kind of thing, right? So if you had a room with a perfect volcano view, it doesn't make as much of a difference as a room with the fountain view.
The funny thing is that so many of MGM's competitors are able to make money off of their fountain, because the Cosmopolitan has the view of the fountains. Flamingo even has a view of the fountains. If you get
but this is, I was about to say, but Horseshoe, this is what's amazing now.
Yeah.
Well, Horseshoe also now in the Versailles Tower now has balcony rooms that just opened last week, which have a view of the fountains. But here's what's cool, what you said there, which is so interesting. MGM's competitors, which finally has changed if you think about it, because what's the hotel with the most copious number of amazing fountain views and has terraces? Cosmo.
Right.
And Cosmo used to be Cosmo, but now Cosmo is MGM.
Right.
Which is basically Bellagio. So really, actually, what's funny is that when it's referenced by anywhere else, it might be referenced as a fountain view. But now that Cosmo and MGM are really together and part of Marriott Luxury Collection and everything, there's no reason why Cosmo couldn't refer to it as the Bellagio Fountains, because that's their sister property, right? You would never want to refer to like a Bellagio fountain view when you're a different property. So that's actually probably another reason. But if you hadn't thought about it, that is something to ponder for a moment or two, right? Because now Cosmo really is MGM, and Bellagio is MGM.
Yeah, but at least there's Paris is still being able to Bally's. No, not Bally's. Horseshoe. Yeah, there I am. Flamingo. Yeah, so they're still able to, provide, they don't call it the fountain view, but like people know what room it is that they want to get that has a view of the fountains, because we just walk to the desk and you're like, can I get a view of the fountains? The staff know exactly where that is. Like, yeah, it's right over here on this side of the building, and they'll stick you over there. But other properties are still able to make.
I think this is I'm buying what you're saying here, and I'm buying the thought process here, even though it isn't something interesting to ponder. Now, jumping into our history segment, and many of the reasons why Mirage was so transformative to Las Vegas. And I know one person recently brought up in the comments on Travel Zork on the article about Mirage, that why is an MGM considered as transformational? But we're going to talk today about what also made Mirage such a transformational resort.
All right, let's get to that history.
Greetings, ladies and gents, and now it is time for a Las Vegas History Moment. A moment of Las Vegas's history. Brought to you by Travel Zork.
Yes, take it away. Now, here's the thing. How many times does a casino property wind up in Architectural Digest? Not often. And this is Architectural Digest from September of 1992. So that's well over 30 years ago. And one of the things that I've managed to, when I dive into Vegas history, is sometimes getting your hands on the copies of these older magazines gives you great insight into the property and what was going on then. So in case you are surprised, I did not have 1992 Architectural Digests just lying around in my office. So I purposely seeked out this issue, which discusses the villas at the Mirage Las Vegas. And I'm going to read a little bit from that article. We're going to discuss it a little bit. I think reading from it gives you a really good flavor for it. And Movestro is going to play a little slideshow of some of the pictures from the article as I do that. So this starts off really, really nicely. Is the best way to appreciate Las Vegas is to drive there on a moonless night, speeding through the darkness and emptiness of the Mojave Desert. Suddenly you hit the strip and the conflagration of light flashing and vibrating and beckoning is an almost palpable shock. Pretty good writing there. At that moment, you know what Robert Venturi, Denise Scott Brown, and Stephen Eisenor, the authors of the controversial architectural study Learning from Las Vegas, meant when they wrote, essential to the imagery of pleasure zone architecture, love that pleasure zone architecture, are lightness, the quality of being an oasis in a perhaps hostile context, heightened symbolism, and the ability to engulf the visitor in a new role. There's a lot to unpack there.
I'm sorry, but it's just like I just think that's one of the greatest pickup lines in the history of Earth. Hey, girl, you want to see my pleasure zone architecture?
Your pleasure zone. Yeah, you see, Movestro, he definitely goes into the gutter immediately. But what is so interesting here is if you unpack that for a moment, essential to the imagery of pleasure zone architecture. So basically, Las Vegas is pleasure zone architecture.
Interesting.
So within this man-made oasis of people and palm trees and borrowed water, the casino hotels act as a smaller oasis, refuge from the cacophony that surrounds them. In these self-contained theme parks, the light never changes, the air conditioning never stops, and no clocks remind guests, especially those hunched over the gaming tables, of the passage of time. Also, notice how they're always very negative about the gaming stuff in non-gaming magazines, right? I always knew that. Well, here it comes. Dun, dun, dun. One of the newest pleasure zones on the Strip is the Mirage. And that's one of my favorite parts of reading these kind of articles is the fact that, it's looked at from the perspective of somewhere that's brand new. Think about how Fontainebleau just opened and you're referring to it. Well, this is basically, Mirage being a few years old. And they say Mirage, they go on to say, which is best known for its 40-foot high Eratz volcano that erupts every 15 minutes each night. Guests line up to see the dolphin pools, the white tiger habitat, the shark-filled aquarium behind the check-in desk. They stare up at the 90-foot high atrium, enclosing a miniature rainforest where tropical plants and flowers are regularly dampened by a computer-controlled micromist. The hotel's South Seas theme is relentlessly reinforced by a visual vocabulary ranging from the Caribbean-style ice cream parlor to the omnipresent logo of fluorescent-colored palm trees. But the Mirage also offers something most visitors will never see: the villas and the lanai suites, the private domain of celebrities, tycoons, and the world's top gamblers, are concealed behind an inconspicuous locked door near the conference rooms. Norman Schwarzkopf and Jimmy Carter have each stayed there. So have Calvin Klein, Marvin Davis, and Arnold Palmer. Michael Jackson, a Las Vegas habitué, likes his lanai suite so much that he asked to bring his platinum records and images of himself to personalize what is now known as the Michael Jackson suite. The gamblers who stay in the Mirage's private apartments are not ordinary high rollers. The villas and the lanai suites were designed for a much smaller group who play for almost unimaginable stakes. Those are the players who bet $100,000 on a turn of a card, 70 cards an hour for 16 hours at a time, says Mirage's chairman of the board, Stephen A. Wynn. And I love the way they do. They don't say Steve Wynn, it's Stephen, Stephen A. Wynn, which is interesting. I couldn't spend 5 seconds with these guys, he goes on to say. Wynn is reluctant to name names, but he acknowledges of the top 200 gamblers in the world, remember, 1992, not one is an American. Instead, they come from Hong Kong, Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore, from Argentina and Mexico and Venezuela, from Turkey and the Arab countries of the Middle East. They are like heads of state, Wynn adds, very powerful, spoiled, sought after, inaccessible. No effort is spared to persuade them to do their gambling at the Mirage. Developing the business, he says, costs some $40 million to $50 million. To maintain it, the hotel has 2 company jets and retains a network of well-connected Mirage representatives around the world. This I find most interesting. According to Wynn, his major competition comes from, can you guess? This is interesting, Movestro.
Atlantic City?
No. The 2 other properties that he names that his major competition comes from in Las Vegas in 1992.
I would 92. I would have to
one
say
one you won't get unless one's a hard one to get.
I would guess Caesar's Palace.
Ding ding, that is correct.
Now the other one's going to throw me for a loop here. Unless, is it on the strip or is it downtown?
It isn't on the strip and it isn't downtown.
You lost me. No idea.
According to Wynn, his major competition comes from the Hilton and Caesar's Palace. That would be the Las Vegas Hilton by the convention center. Remember, they had all those big sky villas and things there. They also had a lot of baccarat action. So in the late 80s to early 90s, the Las Vegas Hilton, which became what LVH then became Westgate.
Yep.
It's Westgate, right?
Westgate now, yeah.
It really was pretty much so a posh property. So that's sort of cool. So basically, they go on to say that the 8 palatial suites called the villas at the Mirage's latest salvo are the Mirage's latest salvo in competition. They are probably the most lavish gesture in Las Vegas's history of pampering the favored few. Leading the villas is a 375-foot hall surfaced in marble, furnished with antiques and reproductions, and lighted by crystal chandeliers. And one of the photos that Movestro has gone through shows you that incredible lobby area. The villas come in 2 sizes. The smaller 2-bedroom, 5-bath version features 3,170 square feet with its own 3,130 square foot garden that features a spa, swimming pool, lawn, and putting green. The 3-bedroom, 7-bath suite configuration measures 4,200 square feet and has 3,880 square foot garden. The ceilings in the French doors that open to the walled garden are 12 feet high. The reason of the ratio of bedrooms to baths is that each bedroom has 2 master baths. His has a marbled shower big enough for 10. That could go along with your whole pleasure thing, Movestro. The shower for 10. While hers contains an outsized marble bath. She has a safe in her closet. He has a pair of putters and a set of golf balls, all stamped with fluorescent colored palm trees. Each villa has a spacious entrance hall, a large living room, and smaller library with a bar, stereo, television, and CD player. Regular guests will find their favorite compact discs on shelves when they arrive. There you go. That's living the life, right?
Yep.
Forget all the cliches about red and purple flocked wallpaper, heart-shaped beds, and whirlpool baths in the living room. That was the visual message back in the days of Bugsy Siegel, when casino operators deliberately tried to link gambling with sex. Today, even the highest of the high rollers bring along their families to Las Vegas. Remember, that whole early 90s thing was very family-focused. And I think you're looking at the hallway right now. That picture that is up on the screen is that amazing entrance, basically lobby, that whole lobby entrance area. So that's really, really amazing. And they were saying that Wynn was saying that their guests, how they describe guests as urbane, sophisticated citizens of the world. They don't want a purple room with a jacuzzi in the middle of it. That's from Movestro. The hotel's in-house designers, Roger P. Thomas and Janellen Sachs-Radoff, came up with a relatively sober, elegant style, more evocative of the Paris Ritz than a bordello. Colors are quiet and neutral, mostly pale gray, black, beige, and cream, and executed in the most luxurious of fabrics and trims. Style isn't everything, of course. Actually, the other part is really interesting. We got to buy all the fabrics we'd always looked at and never been able to afford, says Thomas. When the trim man got to 75,000 yards of braid and gimp, he just stopped counting. Style isn't everything, of course. And then this continues on to say, the villas have their own staff who are trained to provide perfect service to their valuable clients. And I'll skip ahead. They actually, what's interesting here, which comes to your other point about the villa's renovation and private gaming room, which is not in a residential place. It'll be a private gaming room. They go on to say is the only thing one can't do in the suites is gamble, since state regulation prohibits gaming in residential areas. So that's why you would need a private gaming room that is sort of public, even if it doesn't seem very public. And the same aloofness is apparent in the marble hall of the villas. The entrances to the suites are arranged so that guests aren't likely to see one another. A visitor is warned not to acknowledge anyone in the hall, and the arrival of important guests is evident only by the flowering of privacy please signs on the doors. One may ask if the business of a few hundred people could possibly be worth the $25.5 million it costs to build the 8 villas. And remember, that's $25.5 million in 1989 money. But as Roger Thomas says, they paid for themselves in the first month and a half. And I've heard that statistic before, that they always question this, and they paid for themselves, not in a year, not in 2 years, not in 5 years, but in the first month and a half. Anyone who stays in a villas must be invited by the hotel, meaning Steve Wynn. Although the top gamblers don't pay, many non-gambling guests are charged tariffs comparable to those suites in big city hotels. The villas have a 45% occupancy rate, but Wynn is unconcerned. The important thing is to have the rooms ready whenever a member of the gambling elite gets in the mood to play. We have plenty of requests, he says, but we don't try to rent these rooms. So it's pretty interesting. It goes on to say a few other things, but it does tell you it's another reason why Mirage was so transformational. Not only when we talk about this situation where it was the first super casino and what that meant. I think the biggest difference, and something that we should talk about, the biggest difference between, say, a property like MGM Grand, which today is the Horseshoe, which was a very large property with a lot of features that opened in the early 70s and the Mirage is what came. It's not just the property, even though the Mirage offered so much more than any other property had ever offered in Las Vegas, but it's also a little bit of this before and after Mirage thing. So you had this period of time that's the before Mirage time, and this period of time that's the after Mirage time. And because of the financing was so much different for the Mirage than it was back in the early 70s, because there was finally Wall Street was involved and junk bonds. And the fact that this was so successful with that kind of financing, it sort of created this boom of development in Las Vegas that happened after the Mirage. And I think that it's not only this argument about whether, is Mirage truly the first super casino? Could you consider the casino that was the only new build really before Mirage, which was in the early 70s, which was MGM Grand, which always gets confusing, remember, because we're talking about the original MGM Grand, which is now Horseshoe. Could anything else have been considered, the first, super casino? And it's not just the property, but it's the era that it brought. And the era that the Mirage brought of all of this other development and casinos in Las Vegas that were essentially super casinos, everything from Luxor and Mandalay Bay and Excalibur, and you could go on and on and on, and Venetian and
Stardust.
Stardust.
Because remember, Stardust was kind of a itty bitty casino at first, and then of course, when Steve Wynn came along with the Mirage and everything, then the towers started showing up. So even properties that were smaller at the time realized that they needed to build up. So that's one.
Yeah, that tower was built by Boyd. No, that's actually a point. I never really thought about that. But I think that is. I think when we talk about, like, can Mirage be considered the first super casino? Is this an era? I think it's not just the fact of it being a super casino. And of course, the villas are a very big part of that, because this is the first time you had this incredible luxury in Las Vegas, world-class luxury that makes it onto Architectural Digest in Las Vegas, but it started an era of development. And literally, an era where you would say it's Las Vegas is before Mirage and after Mirage. So that's very, very interesting and sort of timely to think about, because now Mirage is closed and we're moving on to that Hard Rock era. But the Hard Rock is not going to create an era like Mirage did. I'm not sure exactly what this era is. I've said this before, but I think this is the sports in Las Vegas era. So I think the last era we had was the Mirage, the before Mirage and after Mirage. And now I think we really have the before and after major professional sports in Las Vegas. So I'm going with that, because an era doesn't necessarily have to be a hotel or a type of hotel, but it can be something that transforms the city, where it was much different before that. So that's where I am. What do you think, Movestro, as we wrap this up?
Yeah, man, totally agree. The Mirage definitely ushered in an era of development, and also, MGM Grand, was one of the taller buildings, but it was one of the taller buildings for a while now, before Steve Wynn showed up with the Mirage, and then that when people saw what they were doing with that, because it wasn't about the size of the place, which by the way was at the time the world's largest casino. But it was what he did to
largest hotel too, I think.
Yeah, largest
but
hotel.
I think MGM Grand, I think MGM Grand also was in 1972 the largest hotel in the world. So I think it's more than just the largest casino, the largest hotel.
Yeah, it was
that
what he did to it. It was
era.
what he brought with it. No, he brought several different shows. He brought many places to eat. He gave people he had dolphins in the freaking back and lions. He did something with that property, and a volcano in the front. It was, when you think about so many different reasons to go to the Mirage at the time compared to what was MGM Grand at the time, that was it. And I think other people realize, we need to do something. We need to do something on this level. And that's, I think, inspired the rest of the Strip to start rethinking, their properties and what they brought to the table. And we saw that even with Excalibur. Excalibur used to have a free show in the front, they hasn't done that in decades, but they had a free show in the front, which had like wizards, I think, and lasers and dragons or something. I've read about it once. It was before my time, but everyone was doing something different, and everyone wanted to bring something different to
Well,
the show.
Luxor too. Luxor,
Yeah.
people forget Luxor was a large property,
Mhm.
and they had a Nile River in
Yep.
Luxor with a Egyptian rite. I mean, there was this huge theming, but
Yep.
these properties that were just more. I mean, I think one of the things that about Mirage though is it ticks so many buttons. It wasn't just a large hotel.
Right.
It was also, it had these villas. So
Yep.
it was totally different luxury than you've ever had before.
Mhm.
Also, the largest casino, best gambling, highest stakes, than you ever had before. Most slot machines, I'm pretty sure like it was pretty much so top on the game. Also the dining, top gourmet dining, that you had anywhere else. So many things. And then yes, once you get into the dolphin habitat, like who knows where that came from? That's like, whoa, that's crazy. It obviously works so well with the South Seas theme. And then also the tigers and Siegfried and Roy and there's so many things. I mean, if you think about residencies, like I don't know, if you were to talk about the top 5 residencies or house programs or whatever in Las Vegas, Siegfried and Roy would always come up in that. So like every single area Mirage hit on. Also like most incredible pool area, especially if you look back at the way Vegas pool areas were, up until the Mirage in 1989. They were mostly like concrete jungles. All of a sudden, the Mirage created this incredible oasis pool area. And there's probably a bunch of things I'm forgetting. Maybe somebody else will remember, but pretty amazing. And I think, more reasons why the Mirage really, brought in that era. And that's why I played around with the title a little bit. Luxury Villas. Luxury and villas. So it is those luxury villas, which are a really big deal, but it's luxury that was brought to Las Vegas. And one of the big things that was this like coming to time of this incredible luxury were these villas.
And I also remember that the Mirage was one of the first to have a top optional pool. I believe it was called Bear or something like that, but it was at the Mirage.
It was called Bear. Yeah. So a lot of good stuff there. I hope you enjoyed this little walk down history lane, but it was definitely fun for me, and I think it's been fitting to really give Mirage a lot of time and to look back a little bit at what we're looking at, because it's crazy to think of, but for me, generationally, this article came out in 1992. I was 22 years old, and that's 30 years ago. I mean, wow. So a lot of the things that we take for granted now, like villas, it just wasn't a thing in Las Vegas. So this is it really, there really is a lot that's changed in the last 30 years in Las Vegas.
All right, before we get going, is there anything that you want to share or anything on your mind?
Nope, but I would love to hear from other people what you think, other reasons why you think Mirage has been transformational to Las Vegas, or was transformational Las Vegas, because Mirage now is no more.
Alrighty, well, that's going to do it for this episode. Luxury travel booking, travelzork.travel. Visit us at travelzork.travel to plan your next amazing vacation. And please join the conversation on social media. You can find us easily. All social platforms are at TravelZork. We'll see you next time.